Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today as we continue our series of virtual town halls brought to you by University Advancement. Our town halls are a forum for you, our most dedicated and loyal supporters, to get to know our university leaders and to learn more about their vision for the future of the university. We are coming to you from the Walter Havighurst Special Collections and Archives in King Library, and I am pleased to welcome Jerome Conley, who has served as Dean and University Librarian for the Miami University Libraries since January of 2013. Jerome began his career at Miami in 1992 when he was appointed a minority resident librarian. He has served in numerous positions during his time at Miami, including coordinating head of special libraries, assistant to the dean, and reference librarian. Jerome is also a former president of the Academic Library Association of Ohio and has served on numerous committees within the American Library Association. He earned his bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in library science from Indiana University. He currently resides in Oxford, Ohio, and is originally from Muncie, Indiana. Jerome, thank you so much for joining us today.
Brad, thank you, and welcome to the Havighurst Library, and more importantly, welcome to the University Libraries.
Great, thank you. My first question is, tell me a little bit about your background and what led you to be a librarian.
You know, it's funny because I wanted to be a doctor when I was in college. And in my senior year of college, I decided to change my major to pre-med to pre-law. My mother, God rest her soul, of course, wasn't very happy with that decision. And she said, why did it take you 4 years to make that decision? But it was the right decision to be made. I went one extra year and then went off to library school with the hope of one day becoming a law librarian. As you may recall, I went on to law school and then left law school to come here for a one-year appointment with the intentions of going back to Indiana. And what happened is I fell in love. I fell in love with not only the university, but more importantly, I fell in love with what we were attempting to do at the Miami Libraries. And that has kept me here since 92.
Jerome, you've got a long tenure here at Miami University. Can you talk a little bit about what your path to becoming the Dean of University Libraries has looked like?
The thing that I on reflection, as you mentioned, I've been the Dean since 2013. And this past week, my family and I were in Alaska and we were reflecting on life and our life's journey. And I began to share just how, from the moment I stepped foot on Miami's campus, I had people who wanted to support me. And I think that regardless of if you're a student, a faculty, or a staff member, that's the Miami brand. We always want to help one another along their journey. And I have had the fortune of working for Judith Sessions, who was my predecessor, and Dick Pettit, who was the associate dean. And they gave me ample opportunities to learn a little bit about management soon after becoming a minority resident. And over the course of time, they've just given me more and more responsibility, not only here in the library, but individuals in Rodebush have also provided me with ample opportunities. And I think that entrepreneurial spirit is important, and it's infectious at Miami, that if you're willing to give it your all, more likely than not, Miami will reward you back many times. And you can't do it alone, and that's what I've been fortunate to have.
That's great. Your impact and your influence goes far beyond the impact and the influence that you've had on our students and our faculty over your long, distinguished career. But I believe that shortly after I got here, you were elected mayor of the city of Oxford. And I know, having grown up on college campuses, I know the importance of town-gown relationships. So can you talk a little bit about what your thoughts are on the importance of the town-gown relationship between the city of Oxford and Miami University, how it's changed a little bit, since you got here, and what's important to keep that vibrant?
Yeah, thank you. And you're right. I mean, in 99, I was elected city council. And when I decided to run for city council, I had previously been the president of the Family Resource Center. And we were looking at addressing the issues of poverty in the city of Oxford. And we worked with Miami University to advance a one-stop shop out on the Pike, the Family Resource Center. And after we had made our goal working with the university, I decided to run for council, but on 3 conditions. 1, I would never take a dime of campaign contributions. 2, that I would knock on 1,500 doors. And 3, I would not put out yard signs because I didn't want someone to vote for me because they liked the color blue and I happen to have a blue yard sign. And I won by 18 votes, and I still credit the geology master students who came out and voted for me that night with their partners and spouses. But for them, I probably wouldn't have been elected. Then I got reelected in 2003 and became mayor in 2003. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to ensure that I would represent the entire city, regardless of whether or not you had a PhD or whether or not you lived in our mobile home community. I wanted you to know that you had access to us. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to find a way to ensure that Oxford was a destination for individuals. Those individuals to have work-life balance. So as you know, we enhanced the city parks with the new community park. We were identifying ways to have new aquatic center because we had an antiquated swimming pool, and that came down the road later. But we also wanted to ensure that trailing spouses and trailing partners would have opportunities to be able to work here in the city as well. So we worked very hard with the university to try to find ways to enhance that experience for people to have access to jobs and other kinds of opportunities. What we found was our hotels were occupied throughout the week, 25 to 30%, but on the weekends, they would be occupied at 90 to 100%. So when Dr. Crawford and Randy Thomas and others are talking about how do we make this a year-round economy, and the College at Elm being an initial way of doing that, we felt that I support that 100%. It's going to take the power of the university working in partnership with the city, but more importantly, Oxfordians have a great way and Miamians have a great way of making things work. And I think as we put this as our North Star, it's going to happen very soon.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I've really become a huge fan of that initiative and that project. When I talk to President Crawford and he talks about sort of the success of small town America in the 21st century, he talks about it in relationship to needing to have certain activities and certain strengths.
Yes.
And of course we have the strength of Miami University, but he talks about, the vibrancy of the library system, and he talks about the vibrancy of the arts community and all of that. And that, I think, moving forward, will really position Oxford to continue to be a healthy, safe place, not only to go to school, but also to raise your family. So I agree with you.
And I think our challenge becomes how do we mobilize behind good schools are also important. Folks move into communities because of schools, so you have to have a strong school district. But also, I think that the most important thing that we can do is communicate between one another. And I think Mayor Snavely and President Crawford talking to one another about how they can jointly make this happen is an important thing.
Yeah, I agree. You, of course, are going to participate greatly in our campaign and will very much be a part of our success, in part because you graciously agreed to serve as the chair of our faculty staff initiative during the campaign. But in relationship to university libraries, what would you like to see the campaign accomplish for you to strengthen the university libraries moving forward? What are some of your top initiatives that you'd like to see our donors and volunteers rally around?
Well, our biggest campaign request, as you know, is to continue to modernize our flagship library, the King Library, where we sit today. The competition on college campuses is getting challenging. As you look at some of our sister institutions within Ohio, they have invested in their libraries in meaningful ways. And we believe that Miami, and we've talked to the president and provost about this, that's one way in which facilities is one thing. The second thing is just staff support. How do we staff support our staff, whether or not it's our librarians or our other staff members, with professional development opportunities and resources, some endowments of positions. For example, the endowment of our head of special collections, you see that across the country with other libraries. Some of our spaces, Makerspace is a very expensive enterprise. 10 years ago, we didn't have a Makerspace, and now we have a Makerspace, and it takes a large part of our budget. Of course, the resources that we provide to our students, both electronic and print, will continue to be important. The inflationary rate continues to go up each year, outpacing the consumer price index in many ways with our electronic journals. So resources, facilities, and people are our three priorities. And when we look at the pillars that the university has defined, those 4 pillars, we see ourselves in each of those, right? When you talk about scholarship, we think of our OER initiative, our open educational resources. This is a way for us to bring affordable experiences to our students. The checkout of our laptops for the students who may need them. When we think about our textbook on reserve, we think all of that goes to the scholarship. When we look at digital technology and innovation, of course, that's the library, right? We had the first website 30 years ago on campus, right? And as we think about the future of academia and we look at AI and other things, how do we respond and how do we stand up those types of things? So I truly believe that the campaign is well on its way, and with your stewardship as the Vice President of Advancement and Dr. Crawford's leadership and Provost Molinex, I think and the alumni base, we're well on our way. So.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because really what you were referencing were some of the wraparound services that we have to provide for our students, and the university libraries is typically the home of some of those.
Yes.
You know, your initiative in which you provide free access to some of the largest the textbooks for some of the largest courses at Miami University, or laptop borrowing or assistance, or
and
what have you.
both of those initiatives are underwritten by donor support.
Is that right?
And absolutely,
That's
we
great.
would not be able to do either of those without the support of our donors.
And I think a lot of times people think about the cost of education as tuition, room, and board,
Yep.
right? And so yes, that's part of the formula for getting to college and getting there. But it's important for us to make sure that we give Miami students all the resources that they need in order to be successful, and that in large part is through your assistance and the leadership within University Library.
Yeah, I mean, we think of the library as an equalizer, right? Regardless of the station in which you find yourself in, we want you to have access to the same information, right? So we don't want you to be stigmatized because you can't afford a book that may be $1,000 or all your books may be $1,000, right? So we looked at and worked with these donors to say, hey, can we look at the top 25? And they said, well, why don't we look at the top 50? And we will give you the money to expand to the top 50 enrolled classes, right? We are now trying our best to look at other kind of unique areas that are expensive that may not be highly enrolled, right? So some of our engineering classes, some of our new clinical health classes, and some of the materials that are needed to support those disciplines as well. We're trying to buy materials to support those classes as well. We can't buy them all,
Right.
of course, but we're trying to do our due diligence. So when we look at that, those 4 pillars, we can see ourselves, because libraries think on the horizontal, not on the vertical, right? We see ourselves supported. We have librarians who support every academic department here on campus. So all of our colleges are represented through library support, and that's subject specialty or subject expertise to bring to bear.
Jerome, what does a modern university library look like today, and how has it changed over the last 20 to 30 years?
Well, it's kind of an interesting question, because this library has always been modern. So when we think about 1950, we think of ourselves as a modern library. When we think of ourselves in 92 when I came, we think of ourselves as a modern library. Some things that have changed are the primacy of print is dead, as the saying goes. So our first choice is the electronic, the digital, not the paper in many ways. But one of the things that has stayed consistent is the commitment of our staff. the expertise that they bring and the work ethic that they have to ensure that every person who walks through our door, we consider a scholar. And he or she or they may not know that at the time, but we want them to have the opportunity in the laboratory to explore and to grow and to be the person that they envision themselves to become. And when I first became the dean, the provost at the time had a dean's retreat. And this one was actually effective because he shared with us that there were 4,000 to 5,000 institutions of higher learning in America. And he said, if we don't evolve and change to what the consumer wants, it's going to dwindle to 2,000. And their needs are going to continue to change, and it's going to dwindle to 1,000. And then it's going to be about 500. And one of the things he said is, I want us to be one of those 500s. I want us to be able to deliver the product and the quality of the experience that Miami has done since its beginning and inception. And the thing that I pledged to him and to my community was I also want that not only to have a university, but also to have a university libraries. So we have to continue to evolve. We have to continue to meet the needs of the students, the faculty, the staff who come to us, and also the community who come and use our resources. So we may have still about 2 million volumes in print, but we have a heck of a lot of new electronic resources that we didn't have 20, 30 years ago.
Sure. I mean, you and I are on a college campus every single day of our lives. And so we know very well that the landscape of higher education is changing almost daily, right? The expectations of institutions of higher learning are changing, not only from our students, but also from future consumers and future customers and future parents, right?
Yes.
So with that in mind, talking about this idea that 20 or 30 years from now, we want to be one of those institutions that has survived and is here. What does that mean for university libraries? What does the university library system look like 20 to 30 years from now?
I think that the evolution will be more in terms of customizable experiences, personal experiences, where in the past we bought a ton of books, put them on the shelf with individuals. We hope people would come and pick them off and check them out. Now the experience is more personal, right? So if you go to a website, which I think is really exciting, a student can go to our website, and we have worked with the university registrar to populate every course that they're in. And not only can you pull up the courses that you're in, but we have suggested, curated items that may be of use to you as you write your research paper, right? 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that wasn't there, right? And we are probably one of the few libraries in America that's offering that type of experience, right? So when you go into the next generation of libraries, you may see more partners, which we have and we value here in the library, the Howe Writing Center, the Office of Research for undergraduates, of course, the cafe for the students to get their coffee. But it's going to change, but we truly believe those partnerships are ones that have natural alignment with Miami libraries. So you may go to some colleges and they have some office that couldn't go somewhere else, planted in the library. Miami didn't think that way. Once again, they thought of the whole student and way those services can be interconnected with one another, which I think is kind of cool.
So we talked a lot about the resources that you provide to Miami students, but obviously faculty are a big part of university libraries as well, and they need support and resources as well. So how do the university libraries support our faculty?
So a number of ways. One, as I shared earlier, we have a subject specialist who supports every academic department. So a librarian is assigned to from A to Z, literally. And in many ways, I loved being a subject specialist because that's when you really got to get into the classroom. That's when you really got to get into the department. And you got to learn a little bit about the needs of what our faculty and our scholars needed. So one, we provide support, bibliographic instruction support for faculty who invite librarians to class. Whereas before we used to go into the classroom and do a one-shot kind of experience. Many of those are now on video, or we're doing retapos, and the faculty member can share with the students as they need them in the course of the semester. The second way that we do is the faculty learning community. We participate in those, working with some of our faculty colleagues to identify some best practices. For example, a group of librarians worked with the Howell Writing Center and the FLC, and now they're going over to the Netherlands to talk about teaching practices for the use of AI, right? We have a faculty reading room as well. We used to have two, which I got rid of one and made it a reading room for our honors and scholar students with the support of the donor. But we want to allow the faculty to grow and to have this as a destination. And we're really excited because faculty are using the library in ways now that as the Dean of Libraries, I'm very happy to hear. Let's see.
This room is one of my favorite places in the library. So the Havoc-Hearst Special Collection area and space. So tell our viewers what they might find surprising about the kinds of resources and materials you have here at Havoc-Hearst.
So ironically, this is the 50th anniversary of the naming of the Havoc-Hearst Special Collections and Archives. So we'll be celebrating in the fall 50 years of Havoc-Hearst. And the generosity of our donors is spectacular when it comes to support of this space. One is the lock of Lincoln's hair, Abraham Lincoln's hair. So it has, I don't know if we've done DNA testing on it, but it's my understanding it is a lock of his hair. As you know, about a decade ago, a young scholar, a student, was doing some research here in the special collections on Lincoln, and she found a thumbprint of Lincoln, which is one of the rare thumbprints that are in the nation. We have it here. We have the Shakespeare folios. We have, in commemoration of our 50th anniversary of the naming of this space, we acquired Phyllis Wheatley book of poetry. Many people don't know her. She was a slave, and she was one of the first women published poets in America. And that is a very special treasure here that we have. You know, one of the things that I like to define the Havoc-Hearst Special Collections as being is the laboratory to the humanities. And when you asked me earlier about the relationship between faculty and the library, we want students to come and use the materials in this space. When you go to other institutions across the country, you might have to have 4, 5, 6 letters of endorsement in order for you to touch or feel the Shakespeare folio. We bring them out for our students to touch, to feel, to smell, to have true access to those materials. And that's a philosophy that we have because Miami is special. Miami wants that undergraduate, that graduate student to have these types of experiences. And although as the dean and librarian, I have responsibility for the stewardship of these materials, I'm very blessed to have a staff who understand, who know how to protect them, to preserve them, and conserve them. And I think that's what makes this space very, very special.
Yeah, it's certainly a hallmark of Miami, isn't it? That we provide opportunity and experiences for undergraduate, 18-year-old students, right? To experience and see and touch and feel, you know, these things that in many instances you'd either never be able to see, or certainly you'd have to have a lot of letters after your name before they'd even give you access to it. So I, you know, congratulate you and your staff for entrusting these valuable materials, you know, for our students so that they can enhance their experience here at Miami as a result of that.
And you know, one of the most important parts of the scholar, right, as we talk about that theme, you walk in the door and we don't look at you as an 18-year-old, we look at you as a scholar. Right. And,
I love that. Yeah.
And if you have, just because you're 18 doesn't mean that you don't have some of the same kinds of visions for
curiosities,
yourself.
right?
Curiosity, critical thinking, And why should a faculty member have to hold it and you not be able to touch it? We want you to be able to touch it and to feel it and experience it.
That's great. Well, those are all my questions,
Yes.
but we're going to put you on the hot seat now because some of our viewers have submitted questions that I will ask you as well.
Okay.
You know, there's nothing, in my opinion, that is both scary right now and exciting than this concept of AI, right? So the first question is, what effect, if any, will AI have on the libraries, do you think?
We're excited about AI in many ways because we look at it as we did with the World Wide Web 30 years ago, right? And no one knew what the World Wide Web was. But the thing that Miamians do consistently is they step up, they look at it, they customize it, and they mold it and meld it in a way that's best for the university. And when you think about AI and evaluating the merits of AI, that's what librarians do every day. They help individuals to evaluate, to assess the validity of material. And just as we conquered the whole World Wide Web experience and elevated it in many ways in this library system, I believe my staff is up to it in a couple of ways. One is we have a librarian who has taken every chat question that we have, our online chat service, and she's running through various programs and creating a chat box that's going to be able to take some of those common questions and have those responses answered using AI. When we think about ways in which we acquire material, right? Are there ways in which we can use AI to intersperse or intermingle those experiences? When we think about special collections, right, and you think of the Khan Academy and some of their AI materials, can we bring Phyllis Wheatley alive in terms of AI and meta and other kinds of VR experiences for people? So it's new, it's fresh, it's exciting. We have to be very careful, but we believe that librarians can help work with faculty, staff, and students to assess and to evaluate it, but also to use it ourselves. Right?
Yeah. Well, thank you, because you just calmed a lot of my fears, because I hadn't thought about the correlation between the web 30 years ago and AI today. And I still remember where I was when I heard about the concept. I was on a university campus when I heard about it 30 years ago. And much like that in that industry, right, higher education will be at the forefront of whatever AI becomes,
That's
right?
exactly
Just like it was 30 years ago in terms of the implementation of the web across the world.
But you know, one of the biggest challenges that we have is how do we make sure we have the staff who has the capacity to be able to do that? So when you talk about priorities, campaign priorities, is to be able to have the resources, to be able to support the people who are going to be able to help the people to evaluate and walk this journey together.
Yeah, that's great. Next question. What are some of the key measurements of success for the university libraries at Miami, both externally and internally?
Yeah. So analytics has become more important to us than I think than I've ever seen before. I hate door counters. My staff will tell you, because I think door counters are deceptive, right? When a tour comes through the university and you have 1,500 people in a week or orientation and they come through and then you say, oh, well, my numbers shot up, right? That's not a valid way to really measure or assess the quality of the experience that the university's libraries are offering to people. So we do things in a little different way here. One is we know every student who walks through through our doors, because we pick up through their ID what their major is, what year they are, etc. Now we strip it out for privacy reasons, but we can tell Jenny over in the School of Business, as the dean, how many students, first year students in management, walk through the King Library doors in a semester. We could talk to Zeb over in honors and tell him how many honor students walk through our doors by the overlay of data. We could talk about the EAB Navigate, where our librarians are working with advisors in academic departments, and they can send a message to our student success librarians and say to them, hey, this kid's struggling with the class, may need help with the paper, and then we could shoot it off to the librarian to help that student. We have a personal librarian program here in the library. About 9,000 first and second year students are engaged in that experience, where they receive an email message from a librarian that's custom, that's sent out on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis. So when we look at those numbers, we could tell how many students are sitting in our seats at any given time throughout the course of the time that we're open. We believe that those are true measurements in terms of how students are engaging. I could tell you 80% of the students who log into our computers at Miami libraries are unique. 80% of our students have used our library computers at least once in a course of the year, and more than once, 60% in a course of the year.
That's great.
So those kind of statistics we believe are more valid and goes to the credibility of the experience versus the door counters and the artificial numbers that people use.
And the relevance, right?
And the relevance there.
Exactly. So Miami's very fortunate in that it has quite a few very successful alumni authors that are out there, published authors. And so the next question asks, what kind of resources might be available to alumni writers online?
So we are privileged in the state of Ohio to have some of the finest libraries, public, academic, special libraries in the United States. Ohio tends to be at the forefront of support of libraries. And we have a system called OhioLink here in the state of Ohio. And that system is about 100 institutions, private, public, two-year community colleges, etc. And the value of that is it gives us access to materials that we could not buy on our own here at the library. And because we've done it for 30 years, we got it down pretty well as best practices. So the bulk of our materials we purchased through this agreement, this consortium called OhioLink. Those access to those materials are only limited to people who are enrolled at Miami University. So you have to be enrolled, a faculty, staff, or student, to get access to those materials. However, if you walk into any OhioLink institution in the state of Ohio in person, you can have access to that material. Any materials that we curate or develop here in the library locally is available to anyone, any researcher across the world. But OhioLink things are limited only to affiliated people.
Great. Thank you. The next question is about college preparedness.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about it all the time. Are our students that matriculate, are they ready for the college experience? Part of that comes obviously long before they ever get here. So the next question is about how public and community libraries can help provide and prepare teenagers for the college experience.
You know, one of the things that I learned quickly in library school is that I didn't want to be a children's librarian or a young adult librarian. One of the most enriching experiences I had is when students from our early college academy came to our makerspace into King Library first semester.
And that's a program that we've recently developed to, in essence, allow the college experience to occur much earlier on in high school.
That's exactly right.
For students in Butler County.
That's exactly right. And that vision of trying to expose students to college a little early was, I think, brilliant, right? And so I worked with my staff to say, hey, how can the library, not only are you being exposed to the subject areas, but how can you be exposed to the library? And I had the chance to talk to those kids. And what I shared with them is a story that I think many students can have experienced. And that is, I walked into my college library at Indiana University in June of '83 for the first time. And I walked in and I didn't see any books. And instead of going to the desk that said help or information, I turned around and I walked back to my dorm. And I think that that story is important because what I think is important for the public library as well as for an academic library is that if I would have walked over to that help desk, if I would have walked over to that information desk, I would have been welcomed, and that individual would have said, "How can I help you?" And they would have helped me on my journey. And I think, and regardless of what station in life you may be, that that's a common, consistent ethos of the library community. And that is, how do the librarians and the library staff members make students feel welcomed in their space? And how do they ensure that the student feels as if they're valued as a young scholar?
Well, that's a terrific answer to that, and it's really fitting, because the next question deals with sort of the future of librarians and the future of making sure that these places, right, have trained librarians and other professionals to help the next generation of students. Is there any discussion at all here at Miami of starting an MLIS program? You'll have to tell us what that acronym stands for.
Masters of Library and Information Science.
There we go. All right. Any discussion of creating a program like that here?
No, not at all. I mean, we have a program through Kent State, which is an online program, but the cost to stand one up, we feel that need can be served through Kent State or Indiana or Illinois or some of our other existing library programs in the state.
Great.
I served as the board chair of the SLIS alumni board years ago and at Indiana, and we believe that the existing programs are sufficient right now.
Great. So your partnership with University Advancement is legendary. We've always valued every single sort of way in which you've become engaged with our division. But one of the most meaningful ways has been through our Move In Miami initiatives every year, which is our annual Day of Giving. And your videos have become legendary, and it's my understanding that you are now an award-winning hip-hop artist. So can you talk a little bit about this latest resume building feat that you've accomplished?
Well, thank you for acknowledging my feat. But I give all credit to our communications director, a gentleman by the name of Nick Kinnear, and a young alumna, Christian Mallory. And a couple of years ago, I was on a alternative spring break trip with Miss Mallory, and we were talking about the library. She was a regional student, and make a long story short, we had a contest during that spring break where the student who could come up with some lyrics for us, we gave them a special treat through the university. So that the pandemic hit, that was dead, and then Nick approached me about, hey, what are some things that we could do for this next campaign? And we called up Christian, and between her and Nick, they put together a wonderful group of lyrics, and we partnered together, and we just won a national award through the American Library Association. But I think it goes back to something that's important in terms of that partnership that you mentioned earlier, Brad, and that is that when I became the dean, you being as gracious as you are, sat down with me, because no one really teaches you how to do advancement as a dean or a new dean. And you said, trust me. And I will never forget that you said, trust me. And that built upon a relationship that had been fostered over the years. And it's challenging for us at the library because we don't have natural graduates. We like to say everyone is a graduate of the library. But one of the things that I hope that people will understand is that just as people have fond memories of the alumni library and their experiences, or when they helped to shift from the old library to the new library, and they were in that, they were willing to volunteer to help us shift those books to the new space. The library has a central role to play and a vital role to play in the life of a student. in the life of a faculty member, and that it takes resources for us to be able to do those things. And when we try to do the Move in Miami campaign, it's our attempt to show just and highlight some of the wonderful things that the staff are doing here in the university libraries. And our next iteration of Move in Miami 23 is under development, under wraps. I can't tell you right now what that is, but
we'll be surprised.
You will be surprised pleasantly.
Yeah.
And in 23, my people are working with other people to make it happen.
There we go. All right. Well, I trust you then
There you go.
that it will continue.
That's right.
My last question, and I ask all of our distinguished guests this when we do one of these town halls. I talked earlier about some of the hallmarks of Miami University, and one of the hallmarks of Miami University is the concept of love and honor. And so I asked this question: what does love and honor mean to you?
I don't think love and honor is something that you wear on your chest, and I don't think love and honor is a pin that you have reflected. Love and honor to me means that a person walks that journey with you when your parent passes away. A person who walks into the office and says, hey, you want to go to lunch today? A young student who comes in and says, hey, I got an A on a paper because the librarian helped me. It represents the fact that you walk on the slant walk and you take a look at the buildings that are beautiful, but more importantly, the spirit of the people who are in those buildings. And it is something that's extremely special that Miami has and has had for over 200 years. From her very beginning in 1809 in the first class to come in 1824, the faculty and the staff have taken full ownership of the young people that they have stewardship of. And that's a theme that has remained consistent throughout these intervening years. So when I think of love and honor, I think of friendship that I have with you and the people in this building that have supported me along this way in this journey. And those things are invaluable, and you can't put a price tag on.
Well, the love and honor is right back to you and your team as well. So I couldn't have said it any better. Jerome, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to all who have joined us online. We truly appreciate your loyal and dedicated support for Miami and the university libraries. Until our next town hall, I hope all of you have a wonderful summer. Love and honor.